regulations, the relationships with your employees, the labor rights, from data privacy rights, and so forth. So technology can no longer be just viewed as a way to cut costs or increase or streamline or automate functions, but it has to be at the central place where it now turns to how do you going to function as a business, how you're going to earn your trust and your license to operate in this new environment, in this society, as well as how you're going to create jobs when we have half of the people that will be replaced because of the double dip recession, as well as those that remaining, more than a third of them needs upscaling. So the technology that comes in need to not just take care of that social new social contract, but it must now also reduce the complexity and the environment that now business leaders are finding themselves increasingly in.
I think that's a great start and a great way to kind of put it through as well. Gary, over to you with this one. I think you mentioned earlier as well, remote and virtual workplace technologies is definitely taking over at the moment. But what are the priorities as well that you see within the whole HR space?
Yeah, so I mean, think about it. And remember, Terrence, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania. Grew up in a little village of 500 people on the side of a mountain, and so it's keep it simple, stupid for me. If I saw something black and white in a field that had horns and a tail and mood, it's a cow, right? This is like simple stuff. So look at where we are today. The crown jewels of any organization is human capital, but yet many times HR has been really overlooked. Think
Yeah.
about simple things, review processes. Many times when employees are being reviewed, it happens what, every twice a year? But look at all the changes that happen in between. So how in the world do we take our most valuable asset, the crown jewels of an organization, and manage it that way? The one thing that's happened over the last few months since the pandemic started is that because of remote workforces being a necessity for a company to survive, things have dramatically changed. So, and then the questions: how do we manage our remote teams? How do we understand and keep a pulse on where they are at any one point in time? What kind of relationships they have? How productive they are? How to be able to incentivize them to keep them happy? Because think about it, it's not, before it used to be you'd be around the coffee machine or getting tea together and you'd be talking about life, you go out to lunch together. But that doesn't exist today because people are home. So how do we keep the workforce management, the workforce health up to par? So these are the kind of trends, and these are things that we need to address immediately. A couple of years ago, 4.5 years ago, couple now, I founded Yva.ai, which is one of the top AI HR tech companies. And what I did is I applied artificial intelligence to this whole idea of remote. This is before the pandemic, right? So we understood before the pandemic that this needed to be managed. But how is it? So imagine having so you're in New York, you're in Singapore, and you're running a company. How do you know what's happening something in the UK or India at any one point in time? Are people happy? Are people going to resign from the company? Now imagine having technologies that allow you to be able to stand 6 months in advance whether somebody's going to leave a company before they even know it themselves. Then at the same time, how do you keep people happy? So imagine being able to have a pulse to understand at any one point in time what's happening with that individual. So what I see happening today, the trends, we know that so the vaccines are coming out for the pandemic. There's some assurances that it's going to be better, but it's not going to happen we're not going to have radical changes over the next 3 months. It's probably going to take another year. So, but the great news is this digital transformation has given us a window of opportunity to be able to think about HR differently. So imagine a manager managing a department spread around the world, his employees or her employees, being able to understand what's happening with that employee. Now, I can tell you directly, because as we put Yva together, when I started to gamify the system, just gamify the system, the increase in productivity I had within the company could be 20 to 40%. A lot. Because
That's
once you start understanding, you gamify it and you give people little trophies that says, great job. You're number one today in terms of sending out productive emails. Now, and, of course, you're scanning through the emails and understand, what's happening with that particular employee. But it's amazing. Once people know what they're doing wrong or right, or imagine if you're sending out emails to your customers, and the tone of that and the sentiments of that email were not very happy, right? We're not very appreciative. Imagine getting the feedback that say, these aren't your style. This isn't the way you normally do it. How you feeling today? And that's course correct. And it sounds funny, but it's just because people don't know. We do things that are not really conscious. And as we're writing, we don't think about it. We got other things in our mind. Am I going to go out to dinner tonight with my wife? Or my kids were screaming this morning before I came in the office. Those kind of things. Or now you're home. They are screaming and the office is your bedroom, that kind of thing. So we've got to go down through, and it's critically important. And one thing Vaughn said, Vaughn, I just wrote an article called The Democratization of Opportunities. Nikola Tesla's dream comes true. I agree with you wholeheartedly in terms of the haves and the have-nots. But the other thing is, because of the digital transformation, we've really reached out further than we had been before in terms of getting to folks, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're in Africa or where you are in China or the US or Europe or Russia, but we've now really leveled the playing field. Not everybody has technology, and that's a challenge. So, and that's part of the impact. So I see, and I talk to people from around the world. I just had a conversation with one of the largest companies board a couple of days ago. And the big thing that they're talking about today is impact. How do we be able to value those employees? How do we get more diversity on the board? Right? There aren't enough females on the board of directors of companies. How do we find qualified females to be on the board? People of color, people that from all different, because as you know, right, diversity breeds a richer company. And I don't mean rich in terms of money. I mean rich in terms of different ideas to be able to shape the company to do a better job. So those are kind of things that are out there today. And so we need to do that. Diverse teams. We need to understand how to relate, how to collaborate. How do I collaborate today in this new world if I'm located in Singapore and I've got my colleague in Australia and another colleague in the US? How do I collaborate and do work together? It's not like I can go around the coffee machine, right, and talk. Even if I'm in a location. So if I'm in the UK right now with a lockdown, if I'm in Liverpool or I'm in London or Lytham, how can I communicate with one another? How can we collaborate? These kind of tools are critically important because if we're going down through it from an HR perspective, we still have to have the productivity, but we don't have the opportunity to be able to meet face to face. And I love it. This is an exciting time. This is an incredible time. We've been jump-started. Humanity's been jump-started over the last year to really do things differently and to increase the speed. Remember, it wasn't so long ago, a year and a half ago, that McKinsey said 92% of the companies were going to go through the digital transformation in the next 10 years. Well, that's had to happen in a few months.
Right. Fast forward, real fast forward.
Real fast forward. Well, it's either, I wrote an article, either do or die, right? You either adopt to the digital transformation or you die. And as an organization. And so it's not something there's an option. It's not that the problem is before we debated things too much. Well, I don't know. Could we do remote employees? Is it going to work with a company? And it would be this, there was no choice. You either did it or you die. And the companies that have adopted strategies to still keep their workforces up, their happiness up, their collaboration up, they're winning this game. And it's a great opportunity because once a pandemic is done. And this could, could have been a lot worse, Terrence. There's a lot worse diseases out there that could have really been, screwed up humanity a lot more. But we've got to get down through and think about hybrid models. So we not only are working in the office, but we are enriching these teams. Look at it now. I mean, if I'm a company and I don't have to buy a building, I've got my employees in their houses, how much money do I save?
Right.
And how much happier? I mean, for me in Silicon Valley, just for me to go in the office, it takes 2 hours in the morning, and I leave in the morning. If I don't leave by 6 o'clock, 6:30, it takes me 2 hours, and then 2 hours to come back to my office. And that's if I do it at somewhat a normal time, like 5:36, I end up leaving my office at 8 or 9 o'clock at night to get home, and then getting up it's like Groundhog Day. So,
Right.
this is beautiful. I love being able to work out of the house. It's enriching.
Great. Some people may not think so, though.
Well,
But
some people may not, but
yeah,
remember, it's either do or die.
true.
Think about it. I mean, just look at the basics. IKEA around the world is sold out of desks, right? It's like
Yeah,
no
yeah,
desks.
it makes
And I don't
sense.
know
It
about
makes
you. In
sense.
fact, I'm sitting here. I've got 2 new Macs. And, I didn't really, before that, I was like, oh, I'm never going to buy a Mac desktop. But now I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I have no choice.
Right, right. I mean, let's move on from that as well and kind of continue with that thought. Let's talk about workplace technology investments, the technologies itself. I'm sure we see lots coming in, introduce very in a short span of time. So what are some of the things that you see out there, Vaughn, in terms of companies kind of investing in new technologies and buying into it, so to speak? Can we highlight a few, you think?
Yeah, before I go there though, I want to add to what Gary is saying. Firstly, I'm going to read your article offline later. um, and I do empathize about the long commute for being a city girl in a small city like Singapore. But I thought the convergence when we talk about workplace is that we need to rethink and redesign what's the world of work going to be, right? It's not just about
Mm,
remote and collaboration or even the change to the paradigm of leadership or how we manage people. Some even question, is there a need for middle management now, right? Are you going to have distributed teams? Are you going to have more project managers? What is it, the shape and form and structure of that workforce look like? And
mm,
how would that impact on our well-being and our culture as a result? That will affect our performance and productivity overall as enterprise. I used to joke with my team when we were running consulting businesses is that, everybody complains about HR. That's why HR consulting business will never go out of business, because uh, and the main reason for that is that even though HR should be the core of any business strategy, is unable to have a seat at the table because it does not talk tech, which is in keeping pace with the modern world,
mm,
as well as talking numbers. So even with emphasis of data, I like to see that the workplace will be integration of, what I call the internet of not just things, but internet of data, internet of behaviors, internet of well-being, internet of collaboration, internet of people. And
mm.
internet of people and machines. How does the mind and the machine and the human and teams work together? This whole connection of that taking place, and how would that inform, lead, and drive the enterprise? That will be something exciting to watch. And therefore, the workspace that we're talking about now is no longer about remote versus living at home and staying at home and working. It's about what does an office sound, look, and feel like. So would that be a change to live and work interactions? Would that be a change where it becomes an escape? Would that be a change to becoming a destination for socialization, or even simple things like office gossip that sometimes can be the best place for brainstorming? right?
Mm.
So that distributed nooks, innovation hubs, we need to rethink about that. So what are the tools, enablers, the technologies that can enable that, integrate that, facilitate that? I think that will be very exciting to watch. So I would say that HR tech should stop calling yourself HR tech, because CEOs don't seem to put a lot of emphasis on HR budget, but they are excited about the future of their business. So this should be business tech that facilitate movements, mobility, exchanges, and collaboration. Maybe that will change and increase the budget for HR, and therefore, more money can come into this HR tech space.
Gary, over to you with this one. Do you think, from a C-suite perspective, do you think spending is going up? And what kind of technologies are being kind of introduced at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's going up because they've got to figure out how to manage their remote workforces and all the technologies around it. So think about it, Terrence. Things like cloud-based HR, right? We weren't thinking about it before, but areas like payroll, benefits, time management, onboarding, collaborative software, which is what I talked about. How do employee wellness? How do I understand what's going on with my employees? And I can tell you from our perspective for Eva that things like gamification, I mean, it really works, and wearables.
Mm.
So I see that as an area. And if you go down through it, how do we enhance recruiting? Think about recruiting, how that's had to change. How do I recruit in this days of the pandemic? Looking for employees because I can't have those face-to-face interviews like I had before. So, tools that allow for connections and conversations between employees and outside talent, whether that's Zoom or whatever it is. Um, so tools like Honeypot, which is an HR tech that allows the enriched employment experience, recruiting experience. So chatbox, how do I go out and respond to potential inquiries into the company? So things like chatbox. And again, learning. Think about where we are today in terms of learning. How do I train my employees? Companies like Skill Cup that have technologies to be able to help those employees learn. It's not that we can do a traditional classroom anymore. What about when I onboard an employee? How do I go down through and do that? How do I train them? So what I see, it's just, the companies need to come up to speed. It's not like it was before. They need to come up to speed to be able to get the information out, and also areas like data analytics, understanding what's happening with that employee and to be able to course correct. So the same kind of things that are happening in education, the same kind of things, technologies that are happening in manufacturing, are now being applied in the whole HR space. It's how do I make that experience better? How do I get more information out of that employee to be able to help them adjust? How do I care about their feelings every day? And it's not a loose thing like it was before. Are they happy or not? Because what happens today is I just don't have those face to face interactions that I had before, and I've got to make some assumptions. Now we have incredible tools, laser precise tools that it can help us be able to manage that experience with the employee better.
Right. And also following up on that, I think employee well-being now is no longer a nice to have, and it's definitely something that you need to kind of look at as well. So what about digital ethics and mental health and everything in that realm and ecosystem? Vaughn, do you see lots of changes and focus on this itself?
When we discuss about ethics, really is all about risk management, right? So earlier I talked about ESG as being a core of the business, a driver now that for most business CEOs are starting to look at it. So a lot of the management oversight, cyber security risk, data breaches, at the end of the day is about managing people. So it's all about risk management. And also, depending on which country regulations that you are dealing with is about individual rights. So the process, the practice, the tools, the technology that can facilitate that sort of trust and transparencies between the trust between the man and the machine, the humans with the employees and the leaders, the companies with the customers or with the employees in terms of exchanging that information or data. That whole process needs to be redesigned and relooked. But also depending on how tight the data privacy laws are there in that country. But having said that, what is exciting is to see that the HR function needs to step up. You need to start developing and pick up skills with your tech guys and develop what I call a tech roadmap and design the whole experience interaction. Then that's when you can then discuss, what sort of rights we need to embody that, what kind of transparency, level of transparency we need to put it into the processes, and then make sure we answer the question about ethics. At Purpose Venture Capital, when we say we invest in technologies, tech for good, what we really mean is how can we create user-led, ethical, but also collaborative technologies where the voices of the users can be involved in the design and development of those technologies as well. So, and when you have more users who appreciate and understand the purpose of why you are designing that technology and why you use it, and help your developers and technologies to understand that, I think, the question of ethics should not surface too often. It only became very often is when the technology community fail to encounter, interact, or take account of this, what I call rights, or sometimes isolating themselves from, the real users who are going to either benefit or use that technology.
I think you're right in saying that as well. Gary, what do you think, Gary? Are users happy at the moment? And I mean, how are companies struggling with this adoption or the change in the pace? Do you think they're struggling? I mean, you've built a company very close to HR and in HR itself. I mean, what are the focus points here? Could you comment?
Are they struggling in terms of adoption? I mean, there's,
Yeah.
it's either do or die. And it's one thing about struggling, but if you're flailing in the ocean and you got a lifeline thrown out to you, you got to be pulled in. It's like there's no choice. So there aren't options. Before, well, the people used to talk about it. I don't know. Should we implement this? It's like there's no choice. You have teams that can't come in the office, and you need the management. Again, I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania. It is what it is. So teams that can't come in the office that you need to be able to manage, you need to keep happy. And so, of course, there are people that had, struggled with it. They've struggled with ethics and that kind of thing. But at the same time, it's a different world. If you're home, it's not like before where if your kid came into or your dog started barking and you're on a Zoom call, people would say, "Oh, I can't believe it. They shouldn't be at the house. It's disturbing the conversation." And if it doesn't happen now, then it's kind of unusual, right?
Yeah.
We've changed our level of tolerance. We've had we understand in a sense our vulnerabilities, and companies understand that if they want to keep their employees happy, if they want to keep their employees, they need to adapt, right? This is an amazing world. And by the way, they're saving a lot of money because they don't have to have those offices open. And think about it from a real estate perspective, right? For the folks. And I would say in general, people are happier than they were before because they've had a chance to really bond with their families. If they're like me, where I had a 4-hour commute every single day. I mean, I would see my wife and my home. I would go out early in the morning. I'm dead tired by the time I come home. Now the situation is, I'm sure my wife is like, she's taking walks and stuff to get away from me.
Yeah.
It's different, and at the same time, in a lot of ways, Terrence, this pandemic has really done a lot in terms of understanding that we are vulnerable, and the times as a family, technology is great and be able to use it effectively and efficiently. I remember, Terrence, I was one of the first Zoom users, right? The actual venture capitalist, the Zoom, who I know, actually said to me, "Hey, I have something, Gary. I got this guy, Eric, has started this company called Zoom. You might want to check it out. Let me send you a link." And I would send my link out to my friends, and they're like, "I don't want to do this. Why do I want this new thing? I have Skype." And I'm like, "Because this is really cool." And so I started to send it out, and now look at it. They went from 10 million users, daily users, pre-pandemic, to over 400 million today. And by the way, Eric, I actually wrote him a note on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and I was just joking around with him. But look at it today. He is worth almost $20 billion, right? Look at what Zoom's done. This whole idea of digital transformation, having technologies that are as good as this, right? To be able to help us be able to tie ourselves together to, this whole thing with mental health. The whole idea is we need to communicate with one another. We don't have those, face-to-face experiences. Here you are, right? In Singapore. I'm in Palm Beach in Florida right now. And so we can communicate with anybody, virtually anywhere at any time. This has really changed things for us in a good way, because we need to have those, as a human being, we need to have those connections together. From an HR perspective, we need to be sure that, there's some camaraderie, that we don't feel we're alone in the world. And this allows us to be able to bring ourselves together. So the companies that don't adapt to those technologies, that don't allow their employees to be able to help them do their job using this whole remote workforce situation, are dead. I mean, the companies they're not going to live. They're done. It's a situation is either adapt or die. It's not an option. So the ones that have adapted are doing a great job. Now they got to look for, how do I enhance that experience? I need to use cloud-based technologies. I need to understand what's going on with my employees. I need to have capabilities like Zoom to be able to work with my employees and have conferences, have meetings using the technology. So it's interesting how far we've come in a very short period of time. If you'd have told me last year we would be where we are around the world, like where we are today, I wouldn't have believed it. It's just because I also would have said it would take 5 years because of my company, Yva. People were asking me, "Oh, you're doing remote workforce management?" This is 2 years ago. "Why do I need to do that? My employees are located in the office." Now the situation is, my businesses, the inbound inquiries with Yva, we were up 38 times at the beginning of the pandemic. 38. That's how much.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how much interest. So this is so startups and venture capitalists are this is a great opportunity, because your talent, your HR, your people are your most valuable asset. Understand how to make their lives better so that they can help you, right? Everybody works together. Collaborate. Technologies that make them understand where they are at any one point in time are critically important for your organization to stay competitive and to not die.
Right. And I think we would all want to wonder as well, what will that talent marketplace look like next year? Or what that employment sector and scene will look like next year? Vaughn, could you comment and give your thoughts on this?
Well, I think we must understand, again, going back to the K-shaped economic recovery, we're talking about two different worlds here. One is the white collar workers who will be comfortable with remote working. They can extend their work over there. But with the blue collar workers, it's a totally different environment. So I would see there will be a change in terms of how we approach the whole employment marketplace. So the tools and the technologies for these two different worlds need to be addressed. So today's LinkedIn might be very suitable to the white collar space. What that means is that there's an opportunity for the blue collar type of work, the gig economy workers, for example, the freelancers, the contractors. So a different type of contract between the employer employees and also between the platforms and the people who are searching for jobs. So the platform model still works. The network technologies will have to change. But obviously the software that enable those companies to function would also change as a result of the type of different profile of those workers. Finally, I think what we need to understand is HR is all about performance management. So it's really about, enhancing the enterprise performance, productivity, and increasing profits, trying to reduce the cost. Hopefully, from a from administration function, you become a strategic function, and now HR becoming the real core of the business strategy. In order to do that, the HR function needs to really upskill in data. But what you find is that what that means is that the HR function will then need to increase their specialization. How does the AR tools become a bit more simpler? Do we now need to have more AI specialists or data analysts sitting in the HR function now? Or how does that merge? How will that converge? Would that be tools that are able to service that now and addressing and different service requests from their customer base, which is their employees and their leaders, as a result of this new change, the distributed and remote workforce, and the change of a different set of workplace. So I think it's still an exciting place to watch, but I will look out for those risks and be very mindful again of the ESG situation.
Right, great on that as well. Gary, the same question over to you. What will that talent marketplace look like in the nearest future?
You mean in terms of the breadth or depth, or in terms
Yep.
of, yeah, I mean, the situation is now we can reach anywhere. Think about it. We've got cross-border opportunities to find the best skills. Let's look at things like software development. So now we can reach anywhere. And now the ease of being able to bring them into the organization is a lot different than it was before. So from my perspective, this is, as I said, the democratization of opportunities. It's really changed things. We're a lot less concerned about where the person's from, rather than can they do a great job and be a great valuable asset to the company. So it's and look at how it's changed things. You don't have to be in a big city anymore. And actually, look at what's happening. Actually, look what's happening in Silicon Valley. You don't have to be working at Apple headquarters in Cupertino. You can work anywhere. So it's, on one side, it's really changed things because that talent can move around and it doesn't matter where they are. So, and the other side, the cost of housing is surely, an average house in Palo Alto, where we are, is about, a small house is $2.5 million. Well, if I go to Austin, Texas for $2.5 million, I can buy a mansion. So, employees are pretty happy about it, right? You can go to where you want to be and you can have a better quality of life. So
right.
We got to support those employees in their desire to move into different geographic locations, wherever it is. If they're in London or Singapore or China, it doesn't really matter. It only matters if they can get the job done.
Right. And kind of moving on as well, putting on your VC hats now, is your appetite for the companies in this space, has that changed? And what has the focus been in, actually? Are you siloing on a certain angle, on a certain area? Perhaps one, you can take this one first.
Yeah, so earlier on, I did mention that I'm more excited about technologies that converge and integrate this. If you come to me with another software, or another modular segment to address one specific element, is not going to solve the problem, because we have a lot of software out there. It's too competitive. So what would be the distinctive advantage for your technologies in this space? I will look out for some type of technologies that will converge, multidisciplinary. So for example, a convergence of health tech with property tech, marketing tech, a whole suite, but addressing maybe one very big wicked problem, like how do I manage people remotely?
Right.
How can I now be able to generate reports and insights in order to maybe give real-time interventions, real-time performance feedback, and reduce the cost and the size of my management force, and bring in different kind of tools to enhance my enterprise value. So those are the kind of technologies that I'll be excited to hear more about. So try not to do another AI come data software, suite. But then when you really deep dive inside, it's the same thing that we've been seeing in the marketplace. So think about convergence, think about multidisciplinary type of technologies, think about how to integrate and make it easier for the HR so that now they can report on digital transformation, they can report on numbers, actual numbers. So for example, if I wear this, or if the sensor or the facial recognition system can help me to address both privacy, but at the same time help me to report on actual productivity of that individual or that team, and how would that able to then show me not just the education data, but definitely the productivity data and the performance data, and how would that impact on the bottom line? So those are the things that I'm really looking at in terms of technology space.
Right. Thanks for that one. And then same question to you, Gary. I mean, with that VC hat on itself, what's the appetite like, and what do you hear from the space itself?
Well, I can tell you in the remote workforce management, it's high because it's
Mm,
critical. So, and it's, the good news is when we came into the pandemic, people weren't really focused on those solutions. I told you in terms of Eva, it was 38 times inbound interest. So
mm,
obviously, they have to adapt quickly. So in terms of remote workforce management, it's hot. In terms of how do I train the employees, technologies for that, it's hot. The data analytics involved, as Vam was saying, it's critically important in terms of data analytics. What's happening? How do I analyze those? Artificial intelligence, um, as we've talked about many times, critically
mm,
important, all different models. It's not only about understanding what's happening, but it's also to predict what's going to happen next, right? So resignation, being able to decide whether somebody's going to resign 6 months before they even think about it, so you can course correct. Because how much does it cost to replace a valuable employee, right? It could be 2.5 times their salary. I mean, the damage that could be done in a corporation. Well, imagine being able to course correct. What are the reasons why people leave? Because they don't get along with their bosses and they don't get along with coworkers, right?
mm.
And sometimes it's one boss. So what we need to do is figure out how we can course correct. So I'm interested in those kind of things. And of course, it's not only predictions, it's also focus. The other thing is chatbots. You being able to use chatbots to be able to get things done, to be able to recruit. Really interested in that because that's a hot and interesting space from my perspective. So it's any one of those areas. It's booming because we've got to adjust, and we got to continue to adjust. There was a big, huge ramp up, and the first people were resistant. Companies were resistant in the beginning of the pandemic. They were exploratory, and then the situation is they thought, well, this is going to be over in 2 weeks. Well, then when it was a month, well, it's going to be over in 2 months. Well, then when it's 2 months, it's going to be over in 6 months. Well, now the situation is, well, I better get my act together because it may
Right,
not be over for a while, right? And
right.
vaccine or not, I'm not taking any chances.
Mm,
it's it's the time to act and to keep moving forward. This is now. But what I say from my perspective is this is not going to be over in terms of the opportunity is not going to be over if the pandemic starts to slow down. It's just going to be a different kind of hybrid model. And I
mm.
believe companies are still going to be open to the fact that people can work out of their homes. The other thing is who wants to do it and who doesn't want to do it. That's the other thing.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're right in saying that people are already down the road, and I think this is only going to continue in terms of momentum and where we're coming from. Again, ladies and gentlemen out there, this is just a little housekeeping. If you are watching us from YouTube, again, just click like and subscribe and hit that bell icon. It helps us. And for you who are on the main page itself, look at that schedule, because I know the holidays are just around the corner, but we are putting up all our schedules for January onwards as well. So look into those dates. Very interesting topics coming up. Again, some of the speakers that you see here today, new VCs, and also your favorite VCs will be back on those shows itself. So again, keep tuning in. And Gary and Vaughn, I think for all the businesses that are currently looking at us for answers and kind of looking at you for advice as well, we have a few minutes left. So let's give them some key takeaways and what they can kind of learn from currently 2020 itself and from this ecosystem itself. What's new and what's lagging or what's leading. So perhaps, Vaughn, you can kind of give us your thoughts and insights on this one.
So I think I mentioned before that ESG is going to be a core of any business going forward as a key risk and a key strategy. So what that means, anything that will help to report and gather insights and measure ESG as relating to human capital is will be interesting. Of course, just like what Gary has said, some technologies, we still look at them, productivity, collaborative, remote technologies, as long as they are better than what we have today. For example, I remember one teammate show me a technology. I'm excited about mixed reality. For example, how can I make my CEO appear in 20 countries at the same time for orientation and onboarding? You know, do I create an avatar or hologram now? How would that work? You know, if that's something can be done now for onboarding, for hiring, for selection or promotion or learning, that would be
Right.
exciting to watch. So if you are very good in one thing and that one thing kills all the competition, please also get in touch. And of course, the finally is really about the whole integration, building trust, building ethical technologies, collaborative technologies that will serve the greater good, and obviously anywhere in terms of matching jobs and creating meaningful jobs, also very useful, are the things that we'll be very interested to look at. Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks, Vaughn, for that. And Gary, will virtual reality be as common as the smartphone? What's the key takeaway, Gary?
Well, I mean, the situation is, I don't know if it's going to be as common as a smartphone, but we're going to have, we're going to have an opportunity now to be able to explore some technologies that have before only been in, movies like Star Trek, right? So being able to broadcast, it's like, look at it. They had Tupac in Coachella. They had Tupac on stage virtually. I don't know if you've seen that,
Right,
but
right.
they did
Yeah.
it.
That
So
was
it's not
last year, right? Or
that
was
was,
it this
I
year?
think it was like 3 years ago, actually. Now
Ah,
they've done
okay,
it a couple
okay.
of times, but I
Yeah.
mean,
If they can
this
bring Princess Leila back for the last Star Wars, I think they can do anything. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. In the situation, well, I was listening to some incredible technology. They actually, and we explored that with our artificial intelligence. One of the things that's really interesting is imagine a possibility. So they actually have songs out now that actually are in the style of Frank Sinatra, but are totally and sound like Frank Sinatra, but generated with artificial intelligence. So
Mm.
imagine being able to, at some point in time, not so Vaughn, it won't be only seeing that CEO, but it could be a situation. We have Maya. So if you look at Soman.ai, one of our portfolio companies, a company that is in our accelerator, Maya is a virtual, influencer that's not real, right? She's a composite of
Yes,
Facebook
that's
throughout
right.
age,
My children talk about them.
right? And that's
About her, sorry.
they're in my accelerator. So look at that kind of capability. So at some point in time, it may be an AI generated CEO. So that's a lot more compassionate and a lot smarter than
And which
CEOs
CEO
today.
would buy our technology then? If we're going to
You know,
replace the CEOs.
I mean, there's all kind of different ways that it's going to be, but these kind of technologies it's really important to be able to look at where we can apply those in HR. So what I tell the startups out there, Listen, AI is the new electricity. Data is the fuel, and 5G and 6G, they're the turbocharger. Focus on those. AI models are transportable. Focus on that's a difference of training sets, but focus on the technology. You have an opportunity to get those to market and to be able to make, as Steve Jobs said, think differently. So get those to market. Investors, don't sit on your hands. Don't sit down in your chair. Get up, because this is an opportunity of a lifetime to be able to peruse technologies from around the world to make the world a bit better place and to make people feel better.
Great.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you both for that, actually. And again, for those viewing and others, investors, CEOs, and all that, you better buck up. If not, you'll be replaced. You heard it here before. There's going to be a virtual VCTV coming up. I hope not. But again, thanks for your time, thoughts, and insights. Vaughn, Gary, it's been a pleasure. Hope to see you again on the next shows. And for you out there, again, do tune in and come back for all the following episodes that we have. So just check out the links, and goodbye. Have fun.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take
Thank
care.
you.